first off, I do appreciate Kenny and Johnny both here for joining us here for this special edition. I guess this is looking back at Life is Killing Me, the 20-year anniversary just happening this last June. Now, I was just talking to Kenny before we got things going. Now to not really officially announce it yet, but to just sort of let me put it out there, what is planned for the anniversary of the album?
Well, we just got off the phone with Mark Abrams, our manager, and we are planning on having a vinyl reissue to come out before the end of the year, supposedly going to be announced around Halloween.
At perfect time, of course. I mean, it makes sense. Now, is it going to be like a special edition kind of vinyl? Is it going to be like extra stuff? Do you know any of the concept or what's going to be going on with it? Or
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I know that, like before we started getting involved with like doing reissues and stuff, we were trying to, like there really isn't a lot left over or unreleased. Mm-hmm. If anything, there really isn't much around. I mean, we have, like, I know that I have, and I think I only have it on like cassette, which was like mixes, like a different mix of the record and some demos.
You do have some demos?
I believe I do. Yeah, I have demos for this. I believe I have demos for World Coming Down and October Rust.
Well, Josh is going to have a lot of fucking things.
Well,
he produced the album with Pete, so I'm sure Josh has got some stuff.
Yeah, well, Josh also threw everything away.
If you walk into Josh's living room now, he's got a huge, like one wall is a huge bookcase from floor to ceiling. And he has all the original Typo 2-inch tapes, everything we did rotting up there with like an inch of dust on it. And I think his plumbing went like 4 or 5 times right above it and it was leaking. Leaking. One point he had a plumber's foot came through the ceiling,
That's heartbreaking for a fan like you.
I was at his house like, I don't know, a couple months ago. And I was looking at some of it. And I was like, I think this is Life is Killing Me. Life is Killing Me. But I pulled it out and said, wow, you know what? This might be worth some money. He goes, it's worthless. The transition between audio and digital, it can only be run on one machine that was ever created. I guess it did both audio digital. Was that the transition when people were trying to preserve? It doesn't exist no more anymore. So
that is sacrilege.
It's all sitting there. I know he's got other stuff laying around in boxes too, man. I mean, I'm going to put it up to Mark. I'm going to put Mark up to it because he's the one. He can go sniffing around there. He lives in Coney Island, and he can just, Josh give him the carte blanche to like start sniffing around and try to dig some stuff.
One time, Josh had something when Josh was emptying out his studio when he was reclaiming that bedroom.
Yeah.
And he was breaking down the studio finally. He was sending me pictures of all the stuff that he found. He's like, I'm throwing all this away. And I called up Mark. I was like, you have to go to Josh's house right now.
Absolutely.
He's throwing this stuff away. You can't let him throw it away. And the same thing when Systems 2 closed down, Josh had sent me a bunch of pictures of stuff that they had over there. And they had the master tapes from when we recorded the Black Sabbath song, the song Black Sabbath.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I think it got thrown out.
Oh, God.
Oh, I really hope.
When he was breaking down his studio, he was like, "Oh, there's a couple of guitars here." You know what they were? They were fucking Peter's Ovation 12-string.
Oh,
which was used on records, which he posed with right on the back of Slow, Deep, and Hard. Right when we all played acoustic, that's his Ovation. And it was also one of the old Fernandez's that was used to do October Rust and amongst other things. Just rotting in the corner. I took them, I got them.
Yes, good.
I'm like, what's the matter with you? These are like, even though they're garbage,
it's worthless.
As musical instruments, they're fucking worthless. You can't, they can't record with them or anything. But it's a piece of history and nostalgia, man. A lot of people pay a lot of money for that shit. My kids will probably sell it when I'm dead.
Well, when it comes to the album in particular, when it comes to Life is Killing Me, does anything stand out for you guys? I mean, I'll ask both of you this question. Anything that stands out for you in particular when it came to the recording process or the creation of the album?
Yeah, I remember Peter getting drunk in a rehearsal studio with a bag of popcorn going, have some popcorn! And it exploding on my back.
Peter liked popcorn, did he?
It was a very chaotic time, man. I mean, he was really drunk. I was really drunk. We have
a lot of booze involved.
Yeah, we were having problems with substances then, really bad. Like, hence the title, I guess, right?
Johnny, how about you?
I did not enjoy working on that record.
No one did. None of us did, really.
No, the band was very disjointed. You know, everybody's head was in a different place. We weren't, you know, it didn't really feel like a band. It felt like a bunch of like bitter housewives.
Really?
And then even the rehearsals were chaotic. Like, Peter would bring his whole entourage down, and like, we have some friends there, and like, it just turned into this fucking circus. I'm like, wait, we're supposed to be writing here. What the fuck are we doing? All these people around here.
You know, and I wouldn't guess that because it's one of my favorite albums from you guys. I mean, with tracks like Anesthesia. I mean,
that's a great song.
You know, phenomenal tracks on there, man. Like Nettie. Like, I love that stuff. Like, there is some great stuff that came out of those sessions.
I always loved the song Nettie. I always thought that was a great song. And it just seemed it's such a simple song. I think that's what's so great about it, because everything else, like that record, a lot of those songs, they're very chaotic. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, it didn't strike me as having like this cohesiveness that Type O Negative music had, you know, before it and after it. And it just seemed very disjointed and chaotic. And then there was like these moments to me, these moments of brilliance. And then some of that was the simplicity in some of it. And Nettie was one of those things. To me, it was just a very simple melody, but it had a huge hook. It had a great middle section. I thought it was just a really well-written song. Like, you know, like Peter came up big with that one, but it you know, like if you talk to most of us in the band, it was considered almost like filler.
Yeah, Anesthesia was great. I mean, we always loved that.
Anesthesia was great, and to me,
that's my favorite. That's a great
Anesthesia to me justified the whole record.
Yeah.
It made the whole record worth it. It made, you know, the whole experience of you know, the band working on the record, that was worth it just for that.
Kenny, when you think of the song Anesthesia, like what comes to mind for you with that one?
The million times we played it after we did it, after we released it.
Kenny, what do you think?
It was one of the few songs, if any, that we played from that album live. So we always took that. Like, it worked. It was one of those songs, like with Type O, some of the stuff was so weird and so complex. You never knew what was going to work out playing live, you know? So if we could
like, we never wrote music thinking this will be a good live song, or like, you know, like this song should be, you know, we should write something that'll fit in a set that we could perform live. It was never that way. It was always, the songs were made, you know, like the songs are written and recorded and created and like developed, all that was done. And then it was like afterwards we were like, can we do this live? Can we pull this off?
That was
most of the time that was a big no.
Yeah. Well, I Don't Want to Be Me was a great track. I mean, straight up rocker in the Type O Negative sense of the word rocker. What do you guys remember about that one?
Well, I remember shooting the video for it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the video comes to mind more than the song itself, or like, you know, developing the song. And
that was the challenge for Peter to write a simple song, and that's what he came up with. Because
really? Eh?
Fucking complex. Yeah. You know, we were all like, come on. You can't write a simple song. Write a simple song. He was a brilliant composer, but there were always like these huge, complex opuses.
Yeah.
That was his answer to that. And what surprises me is that now it's got a lot of listens. You know what I mean? It's like the newer generation really picked up on it. But the video was coming to mind. That's my mother's house. The first shot in the video is my mother's East 36th Street. You know, and
you know, like I remember. Kenny came up with the treatment for that. I remember that, and I remember filming it, and I've like, you know, like as far as like filming video, I've always hated filming videos. I've always hated it, every aspect of it, from getting up that early in the morning to doing nothing the whole day to being filmed, you know, to look like an idiot forever. And but that video was fun, you know, like Dan Folger, that we discovered Dan Folger.
Yeah, he was nobody. That video was nobody. And you know, I mean,
Kenny and Josh, right? Didn't you and Josh do all the like whatever the casting call?
Yeah,
right,
yeah. We were back there for literally 6-7 hours and just looked at comedian after comedian came in and did that role, and he was by far the winner. And I think the director, I forget his name now, I'd have to look it up, but he set us up for Folger because it was like the last. He set him up as the last audition, and he blew us away. We were dying laughing, literally croaking in the room watching him, especially when he goes into the lead and he goes. And then when he did the slow motion thing in the bridge, that was that.
Now, whose decision was it to cover Angry Inch from Hedwig? I gotta ask.
That was Peter. Peter loved that.
That was Peter's.
Was it Pete? Very different.
What really it caught me by surprise because I was a fan of the movie. I saw the play when it was on when it was the first, like when they first did the play. They did it it was like somewhere on like 12th Street and it was like at a hotel on the West 12th Street and West Side Highway. And I had seen it and I was a fan of it and I was a fan of the movie. And I had no idea that movie was on Peter's radar. We had never discussed it. I went with other friends.
How did you end up in an off-Broadway show?
I never heard about that. I thought I knew cultured. A lot of the typo.
No, that's not it. What happened? You thought there was a bar in there?
No, actually, I went with Steve Prue.
Oh, all right. That makes sense. Yeah,
Steve Prue turned me on to it. He was like, and we went, actually, we went to that the same night Rammstein was playing at the Hammerstein. So, and I knew that my ex-wife wanted to see that play too.
Why would Rammstein play the Hammerstein?
This was when they were first starting out. They were like,
that's a long time ago. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Angry Inch is a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
I was familiar with it. I was familiar with the song. I was familiar with the movie and stuff, but I had never discussed it with Peter. And then when I went to Josh's house to work on drums, there was we were doing this cover song, and I was like, "Oh wow!" I was like, "This is great!" Because I love the movie. The movie's brilliant, and the play was great too. And I just thought it was so. I was waiting to see what the response would be for us covering that song.
And we were talking about this a little bit earlier too. I mean, you guys always kept production within house. It was always always like Josh and Peter that did the production, including for this album. Why that decision? Why the decision is to keep it within the four of you?
Well, Josh's one of his main musical aspirations was to be a producer. So, he always fought for that. And Peter always backed it up because, Peter didn't want to have to argue about his songs with a producer,
Right.
So it's a control thing, from start. So I think that the band suffered a little bit from it in certain ways, but gained in originality in other ways.
Like looking at the history of the band, it got the doing things, in-house, doing things ourselves. We got even more emboldened after Bloody Kisses was so successful. Mm-hmm. After it went gold, it was, we were like, there's nothing, this discussion is over.
Yeah, because Roadrunner was trying to force, a producer on us from the beginning, or right after Slow Deep and Hard, or right after Origin of Species. And they just refused. We just refused. And then when they ended up being successful, we're like, fuck you. Now we're, exactly what we want. And then it really became practical because it was so much cheaper. I mean, we didn't want to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in the studio. All the pre-production and a lot of the tracking, even later on when Josh, got Pro Tools and stuff, we did a lot of tracking in his basement and in his control room. And only went to System Studio to mix.
Well, I mean, after the release of Bloody Kisses and October Rust, I mean, two powerhouse albums, was there a certain amount of pressure going in that you had to live up to or exceed just the level that those albums had hit?
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure for October Rust, and because of the success of Bloody Kisses. So, but it was all happening so fast that, when you're under pressure, but everything's happening so rapidly, you kind of don't have time to think about it.
Well, after October Rust didn't live up to the expectations, then we they kind of left us alone.
It opened the valve, the pressure valve. Like, okay, we failed.
That's so weird. October Rust is my favorite.
Oh, look, there's Slipknot.
Right.
Oh, look, Nickelback.
Right.
Roadrunner was trying to put pressure on us to, come up with something that could, surpass the success that Bloody Kisses had. And, that was Peter's attempt at it. And then, with discussing with some of the people that worked at the record label, their expectations were very unrealistic.
Yeah.
And, what they were expecting, it never would have achieved it,
5 million records, something like that.
One guy told me 7 million records. It was like, we just got a gold record. You're expecting 14 times more on this record. And of course it didn't meet the expectations.
Plus we're a weird band. We weren't like,
yeah. And we weren't a real radio band, and we weren't good looking. So we're not gonna attract that. And so it didn't hit. And then after that, then they kind of backed off on their expectations. And like I was just joking a minute ago, they did have other bands in their roster that were becoming more successful than we were. And so then they pretty much left us alone to do our own thing at that point.
Well, I know that Peter had mentioned in an interview previously that at the time of the recording of Life is Killing Me, that he felt that he was going through a midlife crisis at the time, and there was a lot of loss going on in his life. Now, why do you think all that was? Why do you think that negativity was sort of brooding within the studio and with Peter?
He was always like that.
Was he?
But through one long midlife crisis from 17 years old all the way up to 48.
There wasn't anything like new, or he was in a bad spot, like physically and mentally, because he was drinking a lot, and he was with the drugs and stuff, and it was hard for him. It was hard for him to really apply himself.
Yeah.
And and that's that was the sad part about the record, and that amongst the other things, there was a lot of infighting, it was just a bad time for the band, and I was really surprised that we could actually come up with the record that we did at that point. Meanwhile, we were in bad shape, the band was injured.
Yeah. Well, being as injured as you were going into the studio, I mean, you're going in there to work on this new album. What was Typo Negative's writing process? I mean, would Peter bring stuff in, or was it like a group effort off the floor? What was the process?
Peter, at that point, you had to sit Peter down. You had to put him in a room, and you had to extract things from him.
Mm-hmm. It was that's just playing, jamming together. Yeah, just jamming and stuff coming out.
Yeah, and that's how it became. That's how it was. On looking back at the history of the band and how we made records and stuff like that, October Rust was Peter's most, I guess, where he was his most prolific and he was his most prepared. Where he had a lot of things written, and he had a lot of ideas already before we went to the rehearsal studio to work on the record, and we only had 6 months to do it. We got off the road from Bloody Kisses, and we were back on tour with Ozzy Osbourne 6 months later. And Peter was able to, produce, come up with ideas, and he was doing a lot of stuff. He was doing a lot of stuff on his own. After that, then it was all of us in a room together trying to get ideas, from him to pull it out of him. Yeah. And that's how it went. Throughout he had a lot. He had most of Slow Deep and Hard written too. When we met him, when we first joined, because I guess he was writing that in his basement after his girlfriend left him, and after Carnival broke up. So he had a lot of that written. And obviously, with Origin of Feces and Bloody Kisses, a lot of that came out of jamming too, just being in the room.
Yeah. And it's amazing how you were saying there was such, negativity in the sessions, but there's such beauty that comes out on that album. I mean, I think some of Josh's work on there is just gorgeous. Kenny, I think some of your best guitar work, in my opinion, as a fan, really comes across in Life Is Killing Me. It's kind of amazing how that happened with a band like Typo, but then again, that kind of seems like something that Typo just sort of was.
Yeah, we always came up with something. I mean, one thing certainly Peter could always do is compose. It's like, in the end, is all he could do. Couldn't even drive a car anymore.
Yeah, right. It's true. It's no exaggeration.
I'm not exaggerating. We're not joking.
Yeah, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what was going on in Peter. What was going on in Peter's personal life. With his relationships, or with his health, or dealing with his addictions and stuff like that. He always had the ability to write. And to me, that was I'm not trying to slag on the record, but it really was a dark period for the band. And, for Peter to be in that kind of, headspace and to still be able to create, I think that, for Typo, that's a low point. I think for a bunch of other bands, that would be like the apex of their career. So for us to be at such a low point and still be able to put out a record like that, I think is, that's a testament to Peter's abilities as a songwriter.
At that time, it was when he had his Grand Prix, and he cut out the wheel wells, and he had the truck tires forced on it. And they would periodically fall off the car while he was driving. Like every other night, we would leave for the rehearsal room from working for 6 hours or whatever. Me and Johnny walk out, and there was Peter and Josh on the corner, jacking his car up, trying to stick the tires back on. We're like, "Good night, guys."
We just drive away. You don't need 4 guys to change a tire. That's pathetic. You don't need us.
Now, the album was actually originally going to be titled "The Dream Is Dead," which is of course the last track on the album. Why the last minute change to "Life Is Killing Me"? What happened there?
It's just a working.
I have no idea.
So
just a working title. Yeah.
Sex, death, God, and sex, death, drugs, and other things worse than death. That was usually the working title of every record.
That's a great title.
It is, but he never used it, but that was always the working title. And then as the songs would build, you get kind of an idea of the feeling of the album, what's going on, and then, find a proper title. Or a song that's one of the stronger songs and use that as a title.
Now, I know that a lot of fans out there want to know right now, because I'm sure the material is there, but is there a planned live album in the works at all? Possibly you could use that title.
Honestly, no.
You get an AI Peter?
There is no live.
But there must be so much live footage that you guys have.
There's a Lamore show from.
There's only a couple of things, and it is. There was a show that we did at Lamore's, and it was professionally recorded, multi-track recording and stuff like that. And it wasn't
professionally performed, but it was professionally recorded. It was unprofessionally formed with a bottle, with a couple of 100 bottles of beer on stage. You can hear Peter. It sounds good in certain parts, but then you can hear he's struggling.
Yeah, I've spoken to both of you about this before. I was individually, but never together. And since I've spoken to you both, has there been any more talk of a Peter Steele tribute show of any sort?
No.
Nothing?
No.
You both still open to the idea of it happening one day?
Not yet. Yeah, I'm open to it. Sure.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to anything, anything that would, whatever, support the band and stuff like that. It's always, it's always cool. It's still, it's really uncomfortable for me, but in a good way that it's 2023 and we're still talking about Typo Negative, it was the last thing that I expected when when the band was active and we were we were just doing our thing. Every time the bus stopped, every tour that we did, from the very first one that I did with the band, you always thought that was going to be the end of it. That was it. Game's over, it was fun, great. And then something would always happen where the band would continue. And then it was like, for me, it was 17 years later, it was still going. And then, even with Peter passing away, you figure I thought that would be the end of it. And, the band would just, fade away. And then
transcended.
And it still, it still keeps going. It seems like, like in certain aspects of, Type O Negative, it seems like the band's more popular now than it was when we were active.
Yeah, it does seem that way very much. I mean, the last time we were this popular or even close to it was Bloody Kisses, probably.
And there's like, like Bloody Kisses came out 30 years ago. Life is Killing Me was 20 years ago. It genuinely baffles me.
Personally, for both of you, what's your favorite Type O Negative song to each of you?
Oh, God.
I don't know how to pick that one. Probably Gravity. Gravity's up there for me. But I have a lot of fond memories for all that stuff from the old days, But I would say Gravity, if anything.
I don't know. I mean, there was there was so many songs that I loved. And I mean, it's easier for me to point out the songs that I don't like. That's a lot easier. Yeah. But I mean, each one was it was like a snapshot of the band. It was like a picture taken of the band and where we were as people and what we were doing. And, so like on each record, there's something, and then something with, Peter's songwriting and, cause he was, I always was a fan of his songwriting, even when I was, a teenager, getting into, Carnivore and stuff like that. And, but, I don't know. I mean, I've always loved the song Pain, hearing that for the first time,
For me, it's a little biased. That was a fun song to play.
What, Pain?
Yeah, that was so fun to play that could say
Pain was great because it had I mean, obviously it's not, there isn't like a real big hook in it or anything, but see the look on people's faces when we would play that song. And when Peter and Kenny would pick up their guitars and scream into the pickups, and Josh was like, people were, getting, destroyed by jackhammers and people screaming. The look on the audience's face when all that shit would happen was that was priceless. And I was like, that's fucking cool.
That is cool. That is so cool.
And the hook was, hey!
That's the hook, man. And I do want to say on behalf of every Type O Negative fan out there, gentlemen, thank you again for the music and for the album, even though being a difficult process, this band has transcended, and I think it will continue to do so. It's such a gift you left us with. And I know there's been a lot of, there's a lot of joking, there's a lot of negativity that could have been involved, but what came out of it has just been so poignant to a lot of people. So on behalf of all the fans, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.